welcome to the show, Gabe. Thanks for, taking the time to do this. Happy to have you on.
Yeah, man.
Out here on site.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I think it's a sweet opportunity. I'm excited.
Tell me a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I was originally born in Durango, Colorado, and kind of grew up there. It's like a pretty small town, and grew up kind of in a logging family. I think we're 4 generations of loggers out of there, and then when I was about 11 or 12, moved to Boise, Idaho. Went through high school and everything up there, and kind of different scene there. Definitely the city life, wasn't used to it, but enjoy it a lot up there. I love Idaho, so.
Boise was city life for you?
Yeah.
A small town.
Oh, yeah. I think it was like 2,500 people in that town I grew up in, and I think we were 5 generations grew up in that small town there, so
It's crazy.
very close.
Do you still live there?
No, I got a lot of family there, but my home base is out of Boise
Okay.
right now, so.
Yeah, I grew up in a small forestry mining town too. It was like about 10,000. Then we had a decent sized surrounding area that kind of was the hub for feeding like some reservations and some other like local communities that were kind of close. But yeah, large forestry mining, blue collar, lots and lots of people I know are like millwrights and loggers. Yeah, all my buddies. I drug as many of them as I could over to the line trade.
Yeah.
There I drug like probably 6 guys from the logging industry
Heck
over
yeah.
the line trade.
Nice.
Most of them are working for Quanta today.
Right. Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
That's so. So how did you avoid logging and get into the line trade?
Yeah. I don't know. I just didn't want to. Once I got out of the small town, I just didn't really want to go back to it. Kind of saw that there's more than just that.
Yep.
And I kind of just stumbled upon the line trade, honestly. Like, we had a family friend that worked for La Plata County Electric, I think. He was a lineman there in Durango area, and just heard good things, and he loved it. And, that was kind of just my door into it. Didn't really know anything about it, but didn't know that there was the lineman college in Cuna there. So I was like, man, it's right there. It's perfect. So kind of just worked out.
Is that what you did? You ended up going to LC?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I went a couple months after high school. So
What year was this?
2020. It was right when COVID hit, is the term that I went to. So we had
What's that like?
Oh man, we had 2 weeks that were regular, and then all the schools in the U.S. shut down. We were like one of the last schools open, and then we had to take a couple weeks off while they figured it out, and then we switched to online for the class portion of it, and that was tough. That was definitely tough, but everybody was trying to figure out the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, and of course, there's a bunch of linemen sitting there on computers trying to figure out the Zoom meetings, and it was my biggest thing. It was hard to stay awake after doing the field work and then going home and just sitting at a computer. I was like, oh man,
We're not built for it.
No, that's the whole reason I got in the trade in the first place. I can't really sit down and just sit at a desk all day, but
I get the question quite a bit, and since you've been to line school and been through it now in the industry, worth it, not worth it? What were the things you liked? What were the things you didn't like?
I think it's good. I think it gives you a good base idea on like electricity and understanding that portion, which I think is good, because I've met guys that haven't gone through the line school and they're some badasses, but it took them quite a while to kind of just understand just some of the fundamental stuff about electricity that kind of applies to everything we do, so I think it's a good entryway. Like, I think that a lot of kids come out of NLC having a big head and thinking that they're linemen, and they're basically a journeyman coming out of there. So I think it hypes them up a little too much for their own good, but I think it's a great way to get started in. I don't think necessarily you need it, but I think it'll put you ahead.
Another thing I hear quite a bit is I can't find work. I just went to climbing school, line school, whatever. I get out and I can't find work. How did you find that? Did you find you could find work easy, or what did you do?
Yeah, I ended up getting a job. I think it was 2 weeks out of school, and I found a small utility that was just starting up in Boise, and they had just got introduced. They were doing telecom, and they had just gotten their first power contract. So I kind of got lucky with them, but I was reaching out to tons of people, and so I got into that pretty early and got exposed to a lot of underground stuff like terminating elbows and splices and stuff like that. So that was really good for me. But I think the work's out there. It's just guys going in, you gotta be prepared to kind of uplift everything and go on the road and find it. I think that's a lot of guys are trying to stay home, which I was too for a while. I jumped around to try to stay home, but I think if you really want to move your career forward, you got to be prepared to make that sacrifice.
Especially in the first few years.
Oh yeah. And I kind of ignored some of that advice too. I had journeymen and stuff telling me, they're like, dude, you just got to go out there, go on the road. You take a couple years, get it over with, and you'll be happy you did. And
What do you think was stopping you?
just being 19, 20 years old, wanting to be around friends and family and comfortability of it, I think, and I think it's tough for a lot of guys to get out and do it, but I think it's scary to initially do it, but once you get out there and you're like, okay, this isn't bad, I could do this, so I think it's that first step that's probably the hardest part of it.
How long did it take you to realize that it was okay? Like your thoughts substantial.
I feel the first month I had on the road. So I went on the road when I was just turning 20 for the first time, and I went to Nebraska. And that first month or 2 months was hard, but we were working every single day, so it was like couldn't really stop and think about too much. It was just kind of like, all right, what do I got to do next? Like taking care of my stuff. But I think it was once I realized I was doing good and setting myself up right, it kind of just started falling. You do 1 week and you get a paycheck and you're like, okay, I could do another week. Like that really was good for my bank account, and I could do one more, and it kind of just go on from there.
You're with Propes now.
Yes,
right?
sir.
On SunZia project.
Yeah.
So how do you get from getting out of NLC, finding a job, your apprenticeship? How do you get from that to like one of the most massive projects in North America?
Man, I worked for a couple of companies, like I said, but I out of NLC worked for that contractor in Boise, and then I actually came on to Probst, went on the road for a little while, and then tried to get back home and worked for Idaho Power in Boise, just trying to stay home. And a lot of even the guys telling me they're like, man, you gotta go out and experience all of it. This is kind of more of a job for linemen who have already done it, and then now they got kids and they got to get their kids to soccer practice at 4 o'clock, so it's more laid back. They're like, go out and get your money, get all the experience, and then come back and do the co-op thing later, so I came back to Probst. I was on a dock crew in Probst for a couple of years, got some good distribution experience, and then I was kind of I wanted to be as well-rounded as I could before I journeyed out, so I asked to come on the road, and they just, we landed it here and got on the wire crew, and they're like, hey, we're going to do this big old project. And all of us were kind of like, when we were hearing about the wire sizes and the weights and everything, we're like, oh man, like this is a big deal, and kind of just landed it. If you put yourself out there to, hey, send me wherever, you landed some pretty cool spots.
Tell me a bit about the SunZia project. Like, what does it look like scale-wise? What's the project? What's your portion of it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I believe we have around 80 miles, I think. And what was confusing me at first is I've never seen DC before. So it's a DC line, our portion of it. And, I most of my apprenticeship, I was in distribution. So I'm used to pulling up 4 Acer and, like sagging that and stuff. And so coming out here was a huge shock to me. Just the weights and forces of everything was wild to me. But it's that triple bundle, which is, it's pretty cool that they are able to put that in and do 525 volts. It's a big upgrade from what I've seen.
What were some of the biggest learning curve things that you had to deal with, other than just the initial culture shock of going from 4 Acer to?
Yeah, I think it was my biggest learning curve was the rigging. So, I was doing a lot of hot gloving and stuff like that on the distribution side, and everything you could use with a tiny grip and you dang near pull up by hand. Yeah, so putting up services and whatever, it was really easy. So coming out here and just, I think transmission is a majority of rigging, and understanding weights and tensions and stuff like that. So for me, that was a big learning curve on like, okay, how are we gonna rig this up so we don't mess ourselves up later, and how are we gonna figure this out? And it's pretty cool to learn. I enjoy it too. It's a lot of problem solving, but that was definitely a big learning curve for me, and figuring out what kind of hoists you need for this and calculating the weights for it, because it's a lot more, you're over rigging pretty much everything in distribution, pulling up 4 Acer, but this is like, we're working with 15-ton hoists and 9-ton hoists and stuff. So really, checking your P's and Q's for that and making sure that you're all good and not setting yourself up for failure there. So that was a big learning curve that I enjoyed, because that was something I was missing a lot in my apprenticeship. I came out here and I was relearning how to tie knots and stuff that I never used. And these guys are like, the apprentices are showing me up. They're like, dude, we do this all day. I'm like, man, that's something I was really missing out on, experience wise.
That's something I think a lot of people don't realize, is the difference between the rigging on transmission and distribution. Just,
oh yeah,
if they're not familiar with it, switching from one to the other. Distribution, you can get away with a lot of things, right? You can get away with your own human strength a lot of the times, right?
For sure.
Or when things kind of break or, go sideways, you're dealing with a little bit of tension, and it's not saying that it can't hurt or kill you, but it's not as severe as, some of these tensions Josh was saying is like 20,000 pounds.
Oh yeah.
30,000 pounds.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. That's things snap, things break. It's different.
Yeah, it's catastrophic. That's a huge difference. Like, I think some of these, each subconductor is, around like 18,000 pounds of sag, of tension. And it's like, that's unbelievable weight. It's like, that's something too that you kind of just are over checking everything. And I think that's good for new guys too out here, is like, they're getting exposed to a lot of rigging and how to do it very safely too. I think, like you said, you can get away with a lot in distribution, so that in a way can make you complacent to, oh yeah, we're just throwing it on, boom, 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 getting it done. And here it's like, okay, check this grip, check the inserts on the grip. Everything is double, triple checked before we put that tension on it, because it could go real bad, so I think that's a cool part of this, is it really sets us up for working extra safe, because the capacity to fail is there, and it could be real bad.
What's one of the biggest challenges you've run into with the job, and like how you overcome that?
I'd say it was the learning curve of coming out to a new new style insulators, DC, everything that I've just never seen before, and learning to do that while kind of coming into a foreman position as well. So it was now my responsibility to take care of material and learn how to, square everything away. And I was still like, what am I even looking at here? So that was a big learning curve for me to get past when I first got out here and kind of figure everything out from there. But it's gone pretty smooth so far. So
So you're young, you've only really been a lineman for a little while, and now you're in foreman position. Have you been like a natural leader?
I believe so. I'd like to say I have. I always pictured myself kind of in that role, and I really wanted to be in that role, ever since I started. I don't know if it was from a mixture of bad leaders and good leaders that I've had there. I'm like, man, I would really handle that a different way. And I had some real tough, rough freaking foremen coming up, and I was just like, man, I would like to be a different version of that, for guys coming up, because there's a time where I really wasn't enjoying line work at all.
What are some of those differences? So what are some of those things that they were doing?
I think one thing is screaming all the time.
Yeah.
As funny as it is, but like, I think guys have a hard time of, expressing what's going on, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. It's like, if you scream at guys all day long, they're just gonna get desensitized to it. So one way I like to go about it is like, I'm never, like, the guys I work with maybe see me raise my voice a couple times, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm not gonna yell at you. I'm not gonna freaking scream at you all the time, because if I do have to do that, I want it to really mean something and be a situation where, like, okay, you need to understand that was a bad deal. I'm only gonna scream if you could have got yourself killed or killed somebody else, or
When you know it means something.
yeah,
Well,
for sure.
Listen,
Because I've seen foremen that are screaming all the time, and I could just see other apprentices looking around like, oh yeah, he's yelling again. We don't even know what he's yelling about. It's like, that could be a bad deal, a slippery slope. If guys aren't really paying attention when you're getting to that level, it's like, how are they gonna know when it's a serious situation if you're making every situation that serious, So
yeah, it's not the military.
no, it's not. And it'll kind of, like I said, just desensitize guys. They won't know when shit's really going down or whatever, So
What makes a good leader?
I think it's building connections with your guys. Personally, I think I have really good connections with all my guys, and I think that they have my best interest in mind. They're looking out for me, and I'm looking out for them. And when you could get close with people like that and really get down to earth with them, I think they'll build a lot more respect for you and have it mutual, So they don't just look at me as a boss, they also look at me as a friend. And so I think the same thing of them. Like, even to the lowest guy, my grunt hand, he's a good guy, and I like him a lot. So I think it's building those relationships and not it being so, I don't know, like night and day difference, like it's too professional, but it's still keeping that level of respect between each other. I think it's important for sure. Kind of have that connection there.
How do you approach dealing with older people?
Then that I try to. I've actually dealt with that a lot. It's funny. I'm only 23, so I think it's that same thing with just mutual respect. And I'm not gonna sit there and boss everybody around and micromanage everybody. And I'm like, hey, if you've seen this or you've done this different, let me know. I'm down to try your ideas. I'm down to do everything. But I think the biggest thing is I don't want to be treating anybody like they're a first step apprentice. I'm going to treat this guy like whether he's 40 or 19, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to treat you like you're a higher up until you prove different. And we got to go from there. I'm going to ask you your ideas and tell us how we should do this and everything like that. So kind of, just boost everybody up and make them, if they feel like they're important, then they're going to act accordingly. So if you treat them like they're a piece of trash grunt, then they're going to act accordingly, So
I was that young foreman as well, and even like young general foreman for a bit, I always felt like I was a great facilitator of people. So I try to find the best qualities of each individual, and not just the best qualities, the things they enjoy doing the most.
Right.
And I try to put them in positions where they got to do that job. And it doesn't always work that way, but like I've always found, like, if you were going to get the best work done, just put people in positions that put them in jobs that they like to do, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And it even makes like when you got to ask them to do shitty jobs that much better, that much easier for you, because now they know that you have their best interests in mind. Like, you've at least tried to put them in jobs that they were happy doing.
Right.
Show that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not trying to fight you or make you. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not setting you up for this shitty work. Everybody's got to do it, but when I can put you there, heck yeah, I think it works good for everybody if you do that.
What else do you think makes a good foreman now that you've been in the role a little while, you're learning?
I think another thing is being humble too. I think a lot of guys I've seen that, they just pretend like they know everything even when they don't. I think that kind of sets everybody up for failure a little bit.
Yep.
I think I had this one foreman, and he was really in tune with being like, okay, I've never seen this before, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. And we're like, okay, like, let's figure out how to do this, instead of being like, oh yeah, I know it all, everything, and that could kind of come off on the wrong way, I think. So I think being humble and showing that you don't know everything and you're figuring out together, and you guys are a team figuring this out, I think it kind of opens guys up to, show their ideas and show that they can add to it and stuff too. And that'll also bring out, you might not know that this ground hand has seen some stuff on another job or whatever that you haven't seen. I'm like, I think it's good to get all that, information when you can.
Yeah, because you can't exactly come in at 23 and be like, I know everything in line work.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Some of these guys who have done the job for 40 years.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not shy to let people know. And I've only been on transmission for a little over a year too. So I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, hey man, I'm not used to this, but we're figuring it out. We're doing it. And I feel like it's helped me a lot, and it's helped them a lot. And also just being able to figure it out together. I think we're both learning, instead of me just sitting there pointing my finger, yeah, you do this, you do that. We're doing this, because it's my idea. It's more like, all right, collectively, how can we figure this out and tackle it together? And then we're both learning,
What's one of the toughest things so far that you've had to, like, figure out and overcome? And, like, how did you get through that and figure it out, overcome it?
I think, man, I'd say honestly, getting over my fear of heights was the biggest thing I had to overcome, especially coming on a transmission. I remember when I was
it okay with distribution, and it was just when you got to transmission, or
yeah, I was still pretty uneasy in distribution stuff, but we never went over 60 feet.
Sure.
So I remember when I first started line school, like, just climbing to the top of the 20-foot baby poles they had, I was shaking. I was terrified. But I think overcoming that when I came out here, and I think it was, my first 2 weeks out here, I got in a double elevator bucket and had to sting it up straight up and down, and I was like,
and then grab the stick and winged it.
Yeah, I mean, you're just bouncing all over the place, and that was really tough to overcome. But I kind of just had to put my mind to the back seat. I was like, I also came in as an 8-step to transmission, so these guys were kind of already like, all right, he's a distribution 8-step, we're going to see what he's about. They probably knew that I was never going to reach the top of the tower. They're like, hey, go see if you can reach that static. And I was like, oh, okay, go by myself, and I'm just stinging it up. So I think kind of chipped away at it at a time, like, it just got easier and easier as I kept just.
So that's what you
Muscle
recommend
through it.
doing? Because this is a common thing, and I instructed at the Lazy Q for a couple of years.
Okay.
The line school there, actually, so very familiar with like guys never at heights before. I had this one guy, I won't say his name, but I had to get on the pole with him, and he was only 8 feet off the ground.
Oh yeah.
The first time he'd been, I got up there, I'm like, hey buddy, threw my belt and hooks on. I got up there, and I'm like, hey, you ever been on a ladder before or anything? He's like, no, sir. I'm like, you never cleaned gutters or been on a roof or climbed a tree? You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know why you chose this to begin with, but like,
Yeah.
you see the top of this pole is, it's a 45-foot pole. It's a little ways to the top of this one still. And I'm like, Big John is 120 feet, and that it's a requirement that you climb that to pass this course.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know if I can do it. It's just frozen, man, at 8-10 feet off the ground. So like, it's a very real thing for a lot of people.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me was learning to trust my equipment, because I mean, like, I still can't, if I were to stand on the edge of a roof or something like that, or cliff jumping or something like that, that's something that I'm
Not
happening. But I just learned to start trusting my equipment, and another thing that helps me too is just focusing on what I'm doing up there. Like I'm a lot of times more focused on not dropping a bolt or a cotter key than I am where I am and what I'm doing. So it's kind of just focusing and compartmentalizing that, that part of it. Yeah, I've been really interested in doing the barehand stuff. I'd really like, the final check on mine would be to do barehand off the skid.
Yeah.
I would really
That's fun.
think that would be, man, that would be the coolest.
It's a good time. Yeah.
So
Honest to God, any barehand work is really, really interesting. Good work. Like,
yeah,
it's just interesting. It's that much different than anything that you've ever done before. Yeah, I'd highly recommend it. You got the bull by the horns now, like with transmission experience. That's what they want, right?
yeah,
They want some guys that have a little bit of time in transmission work versus those guys that just come off a distro and want to do energize.
right.
I mean, you need to kind of have some understanding of weights and forces, ridding,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. Because the school is largely like, they talk, there's the whole energized side of it, but a large portion of it is weights and forces training and all that you sure you're doing on a daily basis on a job like this.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you approach leading day to day then? How do you approach leading your crews as a foreman?
And I just really try my best to make it a good time. Honestly, I try to, first thing in the morning, we're blasting music on the way out to the job site and trying to get everybody pumped up, and I just try to make it as fun as possible, because it's, it's desolate out here. It's tough. We're away from our families, where it's hard work. So the most I can do to have everybody in like the best attitude every single day, I think it helps all of us out, and if we can kind of uplift it, and I try to make it like, okay, today we're going to try to clip this many structures, and let's show them that we're A-team. We always call ourselves A-team. We're like, we're A-team, and we're going to prove it. Yeah, I know, right? But I'm like, we're going to show these guys why we're freaking A-team, and we freaking get all pumped up about it, and I think that's a good way to go through it, instead of being like, oh man, we got to do this or we got to do that. It's got to be done, like stressing out about it. Like, we try to keep it as most stress-free as I can, and just make it like a competition, or like, let's see how many you could do, I'll see how many I can do, kind of lighten everything up a little bit, so that everybody can have that good attitude going into it. Like, okay, yeah, we want to do this, we're proving we're A-team or whatever, it's kind of changing people's mindset on why we're doing it, is doing it to have fun, and I think that kind of helps guys stay out of their head and say, man, this kind of sucks. Like, this is not the funnest thing we could be doing, but try to change that up a little bit to make it a good time.
What else do you think contributes to good crew culture?
Just kind of like I said earlier, just having good connections. Like some of these guys that I've worked with out here, man, I trust them more than anybody else, that, and I've only worked with them a couple of years, and some of them are my best friends now. And I think it's building that camaraderie and being able to trust each other and knowing, hey, I got your back and you got mine, and we're gonna work together on this and make sure that we're both, uplifting each other and doing this the best we can.
How do you build trust?
I think by just, I'm not sure. I kind of just try to be open and be honest with everybody and be like, hey, I'm gonna do my best to make sure you trust me and that or I know what I'm doing, you know what you're doing, and I'm not really sure. We kind of just try to build our relationship however we can, by working together on it.
How do you improve? Like, communication's a big deal, always, and improving communication. Like, I've worked with a bunch of different crews, a bunch of different companies. That one of the things that I hear a lot is like, we need to improve communication.
Yeah,
We need to become better communicators.
yeah,
You're young. What have you learned in like communication skills, and what are you applying? Because obviously you've worked to be a foreman already, so you have to be a half decent communicator at least.
yeah.
So what are some of those skills of a good communicator?
I think kind of getting in touch with people outside of work has seemed to help for me. Like I've had some guys that are real closed off, and it's hard to, communicate with them with work if you haven't communicated with them with anything else, So try to find, mutual things that we like and kind of open them up a little bit, get them comfortable with just talking and being cool, chit-chatting. And I think it translates well to once we got to do something that's kind of a more serious thing that we got to discuss. We kind of already bridged that gap of breaking the ice, communication. So we're able to kind of work through that a little better if we have a kind of foundation for that.
How about communication up the chain of command? How have you found that, and how do you manage that?
That was tough for me for quite a while. I remember just being an apprentice and just being terrified to go up to the truck and talk to the foreman. He's sitting in there and he's sometimes grumpy, sometimes not, but it was just such a higher level than me that I was like nervous, every time I went and talked to him. And now I kind of approach it the same way of trying to just be more relaxed with them and more kind of laid back in minor things, and kind of treat it more as a friendship, and that helps me personally be able to just talk to them like they're a regular person, and be able to, okay, when we are talking about something serious, I kind of approach it like, hey, we're just chit-chatting, no matter if it's some big deal, we're really talking about dialing down a plan or something, or just regular chit-chat, and just kind of keeping that level there. It has helped me a lot personally.
What do you think? Because you're honestly one of the youngest like foremen I've had on the show. Your generation of people, like, you're literally half my age. What do you think people my age need to know about people your age? Is there any differences? Like, how should we approach you to help, better all of these things like leadership, communication, just morale? How do we better get along working with you guys?
Man, I think there's quite a big difference between it, just because I'm sure when you were coming up, you had some real hard, like stern foremen, and one thing I've noticed with a lot of guys that I work with is just like being that stern hard ass all the time. Just like a lot of guys just deflect it, and they close up and they don't want to. And, they call it being soft or whatever, but I think it's just like, you don't really need to just be a hard ass all the time to these guys. And I think I see it a lot of, they just shut down, and that was something that kind of opened my eyes, when people would be cool to me, I would just kind of notice, like, man, I want to work for this guy. He's not treating me like just the trash. I can be open, and I want to work for him, and I want to kick ass, so he can see me go up. And I think just realizing that the way that you guys got brought up isn't the way that the whole every generation needs to come up. So I know some of the older foremen and stuff like that they've been brought up a lot harder than they're bringing up guys now, and they've noticed, like, kind of being more lax with guys and kind of taking a different approach is guys want to work for them. They want to prove themselves, and they're not just like, oh, this guy sucks, he's a real hard ass. I don't really care if he's yelling at me or whatever, So I think kind of building that relationship a little bit better is beneficial.
So now what would you say to guys your age that are listening? How would you recommend that they be and react to, like, help mitigate that, or help deflect, or help be better to ease that?
Man, I think the biggest thing, like, coming up right now is being, I don't know, I think is being able to take that heat kind of, and react good to it, but also just being, man, I think my biggest advice for young guys listening is be more annoyingly helpful than annoyingly not helpful.
Sure.
Be up guys' ass about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I think that's what helped me out the most is, if a foreman or a journeyman was doing something, I was like, hey, show me how to do that. Show me what you're doing. Even if it was way out of my league or my level, I was like, go up to the foreman and be like, hey man, do you mind showing me how you're talking to dispatch right now? Like, I'd really like to learn that. And just showing that interest and stuff like that will be like, oh, like, he wants to learn, instead of just kind of keep, like they say, keep your head down and do that. And that's good, but I think also being really involved with everything that's going on, even if it's above your level right now. I think showing that interest and showing that you care and want to be in a position that's taking care of that is huge. So I would always try to, like I said, when they're talking to dispatch or if I'm like, how are you figuring out what we need for this pole? Like, how are you getting this material lined out? Like, show me how to do that, because I want to be able to take care of that if you're not gone, or, and that'll just level you up real fast and show that you care too.
Yeah, I think it's important that we learn to connect as that generation, different generations working together. It's always been that way too. Like, I had older generations teaching me, and they were just teaching me how they were taught,
Yeah.
But I think it is different now, and it's not like, so I was instructing at Lazy Q. I was instructing younger people, like guys your age, right? And I found the same thing. It's not like they didn't want to work, or it's not like they didn't want to work for you. They were just different, and you had to figure out who they were and, like, what the best method to teach them was, and what their learning style was, and how to, like, it was coaching. It's just coaching them into, like, being a part of this new world that they find themselves in, which is this working world that's just different. You haven't ever done it before, and you need to find a way to transition them into it. It's not like they didn't want to work.
Right.
And I think that gets mistaken a lot. Like, the older guys will look at you and go, oh, you're just on your fucking phone all the time, or whatever.
Right.
You know what? But, like, maybe there's a way to use that. Like, maybe that's super helpful. And if you connected with them on some level, that they found an interest in, researching shit for you or figuring things out for you that you can't figure out how to figure out.
Yeah.
Maybe you can find that super valuable,
Yeah. And I think a big part that people don't realize is just in that foreman position is a lot of it is people skills. And they think it's just, knowing how to do line work more than the guys below you. But I think a big part of it is understanding people and like you said, just they don't operate like that. And how do they operate? And how can I, talk to this guy and turn around and tell this guy how to do the same thing, but in a different way? Like one guy I could tell, hey, just go run and grab that. The other guy, I gotta, okay, like this is what we got. What do you think about this? And it kind of just being able to read people and you just got to really pay attention to your guys, I think is huge. Like if you're just kind of in your own world all the time and telling them to go do this and you turn your back, it's like you got to really pay attention to how they're operating and what they're doing. That's one thing too that younger guys should know is, at least a lot of other journeymen and foremen that I work with, is they are always paying attention to their apprentices.
Yep.
Always. Even when you don't think so, even if they're up in the air. Like I just know, like whenever I'm in the crane or something, I remember just a couple days ago this happened, but I was helping out another crew and I was up in the crane basket and we were doing some stuff, and you're always looking down at your operator, kind of giving signals and stuff. And I noticed one of the guys from the other crews was cleaning my truck. I was like, oh, hell yeah, dude. Like, never asked him, never really even talked to the guy. And he was down there cleaning the truck. And it was like, that's just something we're noticing, and that's something that's going to make you stand out a lot too. So,
Yeah, I always said, be as helpful as you can without being brown nosing, right?
Yeah.
Like, find things that are within your wheelhouse that you can do and do those things to the best of your ability.
Right.
And be as helpful as you can to whoever your leadership is, whether that's your lineman or your foreman. But if you can help and insert yourself in a way that is helpful, go do it. Don't even ask, just go do it. You do it all the time. But do it in like a non-kiss ass kind of way.
Right, for sure.
You're doing it with legit good intention.
Well, yeah, like you're just working.
Yeah, just working.
I think another piece of that's really important is jumping into things that you don't know and trying to learn them. Like, just if you don't know how to do something, and just be like, hey, instead of them being like, all right, I'll find someone else to do it, be like, hey, can you take a second just to show me, and then next time I'll be able to do it. Yeah. Like that's huge. And I know a lot of guys that I hated this when I was an apprentice, but if they would ask you to do something, like something I've never seen before, never done before, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Fine, I'll do it myself. It's like, no, hey, just show me how to do it real quick and I'll do it, and that's, I think that's important too, is not shying away from like things you don't know. Like if you don't know it, ask about it, try to get involved with it, jump in that equipment and be like, hey, show me these controls real quick and I'll practice them a little bit, and then I can start running it for you. I think that's important too, of including yourself in everything that you can be.
Yeah. Okay, this question's not to it's only in the spirit of helping, all right? It's a question about, like, are the leaders above you supporting you enough? Because one thing we're trying to do really well within the organization we're in is support foremen, because we realize that, foremen are the lifeblood of the organization. They're really the go-between the field and every entity above, right? So they're real key, right? That leadership position is a key leadership position. So do you feel supported by leadership above you? And whether you do or don't, is there anything that you feel like maybe leadership needs to hear, isn't hearing from the field? And again, like it literally legit just comes out of like sheer wanting to know, because something that I hear from them all the time is like, we really need to get out into the field more. And I think no matter what organization you're in, whether it's ours or whatever, it's always a struggle for leadership to get into the field, because they're dealing with stuff, man. They're running businesses. Like it's not like they're not doing anything, as much as, some people might think that. Yeah, because they're busy and it's hard to get out. So I like to use this as a way to help communicate, because I know they listen to it. Yeah. And I know, you guys listen to it. For sure. So is there anything like they need to know, feel supported in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel supported. I do feel that there is a disconnect between like the foreman of the field and then above that. And I think something that maybe if it was just like once a month or once every couple weeks of being able to get together with the people in the office who are kind of pushing along this project and stuff like that, is kind of figuring out what our goals are for everything, because I get it passed down from the GF.
Yep.
Okay, this is kind of a small scope of what we need done, and then my job is to go out and make that happen with my crew and get it done. So I think just kind of the overall scope of where we're headed and maybe deadlines or something like that. And that's not something that's critical to what I do every day, but having an idea of that and just kind of generally where we're headed is, I feel like, would be helpful to keep in the back of my head and understand, like, okay, like we really need to be pushing right now and busting stuff out, and instead of getting kind of blindsided, like, oh, we have a date, like it needs to be done, we need to get in. It's like, oh shoot. And that it'd kind of help prepare and kind of have a good idea like where we're headed with everything. I think that would be good, and just to kind of connect with those guys more, because it's, like I said, they're never in the field and we're never in the office, so it's, we all have our parts to play, but kind of bridging that gap, I think, would be helpful in a lot of ways. To
It's like trying to learn a language. The best way to learn a language is through immersion. Like you can go run Duolingo like I do, but the best way to learn it is to actually immerse yourself in it, right?
Yeah.
Immerse yourself in the culture,
Sure.
immerse yourself in the language. It's the same way for, an apprentice to a lineman, lineman to foreman to, construction manager or above. If you can get around people who've done this for a while and immerse yourself in it. And I think you can't always do that. I get it. Like foreman's got to be out on the crew, but if you can find as many ways as possible to get together when you can and show each other what you do,
For sure.
like the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and I think that would help them kind of understand like what it takes to get something accomplished beyond just being on paper.
True.
And I think that's something that's kind of like a tale old as time, is like they're like, oh yeah, just get it done, and we're in the field lineman, we're like, yeah, just get it done, this is going to be the hardest thing we've done. It's like, I think just kind of showing it'll be good for both people to get that perspective of, okay, yeah, in the back of maybe the guy making this plan, in the office, is like, oh man, like this is gonna take some real man hours, these guys are gonna be busting their ass to try to get this done. Like, it kind of help them understand a little bit more, and also, like, vice versa, just being like, okay, like this is what they're getting pushed to get done, and this is what they expect from us, and kind of having that communication there, I think, would just make everything run smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. What separates a foreman that runs a job from one that builds a crew?
I think one that runs a job does a lot of this, and a guy that runs a crew is intuitive with their people, and you guys are working more as a unit together, and there's kind of less of a separation between, okay, yeah, I'm your big boss and you guys are my minions here. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, let's work together. Let's figure out how we're gonna do this and most effective, and what's your idea. And yeah, you're a new apprentice, but what do you got to offer here? And I think it's kind of building a crew is like building your A team, instead of just being like, yeah, you guys need to freaking do it, you need to get it done, blah blah blah, and I'm gonna sit over here and wait till it's done. I think that's kind of what I take from that is, but
What do you got? What do you want to do next after this?
and I am, like I was talking to you about earlier, I'm really interested in doing some energized work off the skid.
Yep.
And I think that would be, I've heard a lot about barehand work and kind of the professional side of just being so, like, I don't know, I feel like it's scalpel work, it's very, and that interests me a lot, especially coming from distro and doing the hot energized stuff. I really like that type of, just dialed in work. And I think that would be kind of my last box to check. I've done underground distribution, transmission, and now I'm doing the helicopter work. So I think to kind of merge it all together would be to be able to do that energized work off the helicopter. And I think, man,
just even in energized work in general, like there's so much to learn and so much that it can teach you about how to become a better planner too. Like just a job planner. I was just talking about this with Josh, like planning your jobs, because planning leads to good communication, leads to good job execution, leads to productivity, leads to crews being safer. And it all starts with proper planning. And that's one thing that Energized Services teaches you right off the hop.
Yeah.
And if you don't execute properly on creating great job plans and execute those job plans accordingly, it's like you're out. That's it.
Yeah.
So you can teach you a lot with that. And then, like you said, a lot of precision scalpel work.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like just, but you're in there. Like, and it's, high voltage. It's not that distro's not, but like it's different. It's a different feeling, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
You're in it to win it.
Yeah. And I came up under a journeyman who went through the Barehand school, and he was, man, he taught me everything I know about gloving, everything, and just the way that he carried himself and the way that he operated, and like he's still a goofy lineman guy, of course, but he was very professional. And when he turned it on and he was, really in the zone and everything, it was just like, he was saying that's how it is going through that barehand stuff, is like, man, he could be goofy and whatever, but the way he operated just like leveled it.
Professional.
Yeah, it's professional.
It's like Theo Vaughn. Freaking goofball, but he's pretty pro.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know.
But I took a lot from that guy, and he showed me a lot of stuff. Like he would talk about barehand stuff all the time and kind of what that did for him. And I was like, man, that would just take you to that next level too, like that would be exciting.
Cool, Gabe. Well, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks for saying yes to coming on the show and taking the time to do it. This is a good conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
I hope you guys got some value out of that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I just want to draw your awareness to a couple of other things. So we make these podcasts, yes, but it's not the only thing that we put out as far as content. Our social medias are full of valuable cuts from the podcast itself, as well as just a bunch of other educational stuff and entertainment. So go follow us at Powerline Podcast on all social media platforms, and then also YouTube. I don't think that a lot of you are aware of this, but we don't just load these podcasts onto YouTube. We also make vlogs, which are super educational, entertaining, great place to direct people to learn about the industry, learn about the trade, or just learn about what's going on within either Quanta or the Powerline industry in general. So hit up our YouTube channel. Again, it's at Powerline Podcast. You can catch those vlogs on there. We also load a bunch of other extra content in video form. We try to up the quality every time we do this. We try to up that quality. So hit up the YouTube channel and make sure you're subbed to all those platforms. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you again soon. We'll see you again soon. Peace.